Good evening, everyone, and welcome to League of Women Voters Broward County's General Meeting for March 2026. This meeting is being recorded. Nice to see some familiar faces and names, and welcome to all of our new participants. This is Women's History Month. Happy Women's History Month. We just celebrated International Women's Day at the beginning of the month. But we're celebrating Women's History Month all month long at League of Women Voters. We celebrate women's history the entire time. We also have a leadership program that's currently in the middle of that program. If you're not a part of that program for 2026, make sure you sign up for 2027. It occurs about 6 to 7 Saturdays out of the year, where we invite our community leaders to come and teach us about what it is like to be in leadership. And we exchange ideas with each other, how we can make our community better. If you have not been on our event calendar at League of Women Voters Broward County, you will not know that we have quite a few important things that are coming up. Make sure that you go on the calendar. For next month, actually for May 3rd, we have our annual luncheon where we are still celebrating women. The theme of the luncheon this year is called Hats Off to Women Who Lead. So we will be having registration open shortly. We're going to have a panel of speakers, movers and shakers from Broward County. Of course, with the theme, Hats Off to Women Who Lead. Hats are optional and should be fun. I'm really interested in seeing the types of hats everyone's going to wear, but it's a luncheon program at the Jacaranda Country Club, and check your emails. We'll have some more information on that shortly. This evening, we are talking about the Florida Legislative Roundup, which just completed just a few days ago, and we are going to have our environmental co-chair and our voter services chair and some of our other committee chairs talk about good and bad bills. We're going to go through a PowerPoint presentation, and then we are going to be taking any of your questions that you may have. So without further ado, I am going to turn this meeting over to Stephanie Pearson.
That's of interest.
Okay, welcome everyone. As Suzette said, this is the 2026 Florida Legislative Roundup. We have PowerPoint. You should all be able to see this on your screen. Let me know if you can't. And we have the chairs of various issues committees who are going to speak to the bills in the PowerPoint. So I can advance the PowerPoint, and if you just let me know in each screen. So we're going to start with, these are all the different issues we're going to be discussing today.
I cannot see the PowerPoint.
Anybody else have a problem?
I cannot see the PowerPoint.
Oh my, okay. I'll stop sharing and reshare and see if that works.
I could see it.
I can see
I
it.
could see it.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to do it again.
Okay.
I can see it now.
Okay,
I can see
Good.
it too.
okay. So here's the list of the different committees who are going to be speaking. So we're going to start out with Monica and Voter Services.
Okay, well,
Can you advance the PowerPoint, or would you like me to?
no, you'll have to advance
Okay.
the PowerPoint for me.
Okay.
And if everyone will be sure that they mute themselves also. So we have one big bad bill, and that is SB 1334, HB 1991, that eventually was called Election Integrity. Now, if there's any good news associated with it, somebody needs to mute because we're hearing, or if somebody can, okay, there. So the only good part of this bill eventually was that rather than put it into effect on July 1st of this year, which would just totally have destroyed the midterm elections, they did go with the January 1st, 2027 effective date. So for voters anyway, it's not going to have any effect on midterm elections. After this date, proof of citizenship is going to be required as part of your voter registration record. So if you register to vote new, if you update your voter registration, even if you are already a registered voter, that you have to have proof of citizenship. And for most of us, I'm sure everyone on this call, this is not going to be an issue. It's really an issue for a small percentage of people, but that's still too many. So if you are a U.S. citizen and you have a valid Florida driver's license or identification card, this bill is not going to affect you because the citizenship status is already in the Florida Highway Safety and Motor Vehicle Database. Okay, and the reason is because Florida only issues real IDs. That was started back in 2010. And so it's been long enough that I think most people have forgotten what it was they had to do to get that real ID. You had to provide the citizenship status documents at that time. It might have been a passport, it might have been your birth certificate plus a marriage certificate, but you already had to do that. So it's going to be everybody going forward that this is going to affect if they're going to be doing a new voter registration. Okay? So the main thing that I would say at this point in time for everyone is make sure the information in the database is correct. And then what we're going to be encouraging from a league perspective is that everyone should obtain a Florida driver's license or ID. And this is especially true for young people because they just don't drive the way that most of us on this call, we couldn't wait to turn 16 and get access to the car. Well, that's not true for a lot of kids. And so even if they're not going to get a driver's license, they can get an ID card. The other group it's going to affect are probably disabled people who don't drive, and also elderly people who may have given up their driver's license but didn't think about shifting over to a Florida ID. The league actually pushed an amendment that would have had an exemption for anyone that was 80 years young or older and had voted in the last 4 general elections. But that was turned down by the legislature, most of the legislators, for fear that it would grandfather in non-citizens. Well, we all know that's a bunch of bunk, but we tried. The league definitely tried. The other thing that's happening in this bill is starting July 1st, 2027, anyone who gets a new, renewed, or replaces their Florida driver's license or ID is actually going to indicate on the card itself, directly on that driver's license or ID, what your citizenship status is. But that's not going to happen until next year. If you can forward one. So continuing with this bill, the other thing it's going to do is it eliminates 5 specific identifications that you could use if you were voting in person, early voting, or on election day. Student IDs are no longer going to be valid. That may not be such a great loss because oftentimes they didn't have both the photo and the signature. But still, it was a helpful thing. No longer allows debit or credit cards. Retirement center IDs, again, this is going to affect elderly, neighborhood association IDs, and public assistance IDs. And then you can see in the little box there how the votes went. Essentially, it was a party line vote in both the Senate and the House. The main thing that they did is that they did not touch vote by mail. I mean, I think that's something that's become pretty sacred here in Florida. Now, as we all know, I'm traveling, so I don't know what happened today, but I think the U.S. Senate was going to be discussing the SAVE Act, because essentially what this election integrity bill is. It's very similar to what they were trying to do at the U.S. level. But anyway, that is the bill. We will be putting out more information about this bill as we learn how it's really going to affect us. And we'll have articles in the newsletter coming up. There was actually an article in the Florida voter newsletter that came out last Friday. So if you'll move forward, Stephanie, there were some other election-related bills. We had one positive one, and that was volunteering at poll locations. High school students, they have to be registered or pre-registered to vote, but they are going to be able to volunteer to assist poll workers, and in return, they receive community service hours. And so we're hoping that this may be one way to get young people involved with elections and take over for those of us who are finding those 14-hour days to get kind of long in the tooth. The other two bills that I have up there, they did not pass the House, but one was restoration of voting rights. It passed two Senate committees unanimously. The other one was notice of restoration of voting rights, information putting it on the sentencing scorecards. And that did pass unanimously, but it never went anywhere in the House. The main reason I bring these up is that it just shows you what the legislature can do if they want to. So when I first talked about these bills at when we were up in Tallahassee to the league group, I said, they're not going to go anywhere at all. They never do. This is the fourth year they had been put on the docket. And lo and behold, the Senate started working with these. But the league was told, and our coalition partners, we were told, do not go there and support these bills. If we supported the bills, they wouldn't vote for them. As long as coalition members did nothing, they would vote for them. And sure enough, they did. We never understood why, what was going on, but they were willing to do the right thing as long as we didn't advocate for them. Go figure. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Agustina is traveling, so we're just going to put this slide in for her for affordable housing. She brought up these bills. They both failed. One would have required local governments to allow accessory dwelling units to be used in certain areas to help with affordable housing. The second group of bills dealt with community associations, and it was revising those rules that were associated with HOAs, condos, etc. Now, as most of you already know, we still don't have a budget, and so all committees have to keep an eye on the budget because there could be a lot of things that are going to get slipped into the budget, good or bad. And for Augustina, they're going to be looking at the ship and sail affordable housing programs, homelessness programs, and some other housing programs. And next slide, and I think that goes to, we're passing over to Anna. Thank you.
On the DEI area, one bill passed, and the vote was along party lines. The Senate voted 25 in favor and 11 no, and the House 77 yes and 37 no. This bill, SB 1134, prohibits county governments and municipalities from spending any funds or in any way contracting with anyone, including volunteers, vendors, agents, employees, contractors, or spending any funds, authorizing any funds related to DEI. They also said if the local governments were to enact any local ordinances, resolutions, all of those are void by state law. The penalty is that the local officials will be committing a misfeasance or malfeasance, which be the grounds for removal by the governor. The enforcement of the law can be done by any local resident who may file a lawsuit may get declaratory relief, injunctive relief, damages, and costs against the local government. All the ordinances will be void. Any contractors or any agents, any grants recipients from the local government would have to certify that any of the government funds they're receiving would not be spent in any activity related to DEI. The law would be effective on January 1st, 2027, which means that for this year, the local governments can still engage in some of these activities. Those governments that have DEI officers or DEI staff officers, all of those people would have to be either terminated or reassigned to some other activities as of January 1st, 2027. The exclusions or the exceptions would be federal and the state holidays, and there are several of those. I listed in this slide some of the most important ones, and I listed they have to be authorized by a state law or federal law. So I included in here a citation to those laws so that some of these could be held. For example, Juneteenth, we can celebrate those. Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, but nothing about the Pride events or Pride Month. That is not included in here. We also have a National Black History Month that is part of a public law, but it was not listed in the statute that lists the federal holidays. So we have a little bit of time for the governments to comply with this law, but it will be quite a big of a change. Some of the private companies are doing rethinking of calling the DEI officers more like work enhancement or other kinds of inclusion or belonging or some other kinds of employment enhancement or people that would feel more comfortable at home, but not using the terms DEI at all. So that's it for this law.
Thank you, Anna.
You're welcome.
Okay, we next have the education bills. Natalia?
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Natalia. I'm the chair of our education committee. As with every session, there were a ton of education bills being floated around, but only few are headed to the governor's desk. So I'm going to focus on those for time's sake. But if you're interested in education, some of those bills that didn't make it, we have an education committee meeting next week, Tuesday at 7, so please register. In terms of the first bill, Senate Bill 824, House Bill 1147, School District Unimproved Real Property, it was ordered enrolled last week. It requires school districts to document their vacant land and its value and report it to the state. And then the Department of Education would then publish that data in a statewide report. So this is kind of on the heels of the Schools of Hope legislation from last session, which is still in place, that requires public schools to allow certain charter operators to co-locate on public school facilities at no cost. Those in favor of this bill say that the purpose is to make it easier for the public to know how much land school districts are amassing. They're saying it's for transparency's sake. And those who are against the bill question how that sort of list could be used. They wonder if the intent is basically to have an inventory so that those charter school operators can more easily claim that land. So that's through. The next one is Senate Bill 1620, House Bill 1073. That was ordered enrolled last week as well. This one has been kind of called the Bill of Rights for school board members, and it provides them with some specified rights. So it says that school board members are required to have free and timely access to all school district documents necessary to fulfill their duties. Specifically, records requested would have to be offered to all the board members within 10 business days. Members would have a right to consult with the district's chief financial officer. With the permission of the superintendent, they could request certain documents from staff and other things like that. Every sort of relationship between a board and their superintendent is different. Every district is different. So some of these things are actually already happening in sort of a more cooperative district, and then in others it's not. So this enshrines it into law if passed, but that's not to say these things aren't necessarily happening. It's just, to make it uniform across the board. I'm actually going to skip the next one, school safety, because I know it's going to come up in the gun violence prevention section. And instead, I'm going to talk about one more that was ordered engrossed yesterday and then enrolled, which is the school teacher training and mentoring program. It's been referred to as a train bill, meaning they just kept attaching provisions as the session was coming to its conclusion. And so it started as mentoring and it's still in there, but now there are other things attached to it. So I'll start with specifically the mentoring piece. It would place retired classroom teachers or current classroom teachers in schools earning a grade of D or an F to act as mentors, specifically to either new classroom teachers or teachers who have been rated as needing improvement, or those who might need some extra help with behavior management in the classroom. Each mentor-mentee relationship through the program would be for one grading period. The retired teachers who would be part of the program must have 3 years of experience and must have been rated as highly effective. And they can be paid up to $3,000 for that. So that's still in play, the mentoring program. But some examples of other things that have been added are requiring students in grades 3 through 5 to study cursive and demonstrate proficiency in cursive by the end of 5th grade. Also, displaying portraits of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln in a conspicuous place at each public school in the district. Also, some things about small private schools being able to operate in commercially zoned buildings and just additional things. But that all went to the governor's desk right now. And then as far as the budget consideration, this came from Senate Bill 318, Educational Scholarship Programs. There was no House companion and it died in messages, but that bill would have implemented measures to increase accountability and transparency in voucher programs. The kind of quickest version of the background is that in 2023, the eligibility for vouchers in Florida expanded to just basically every school age student. And those vouchers divert public funds to private schools and homeschooled students. Vouchers are not going away, but this would at least improve oversight and predictability. So as far as the specific budget consideration, this would have created dedicated, restricted funding for the Family Empowerment Scholarship Program. So it would have isolated that funding in the state budget just for this. And as far as transparency and accountability, it would prohibit parents from applying for multiple voucher programs. It would require the Department of Education to cross-check each list of eligible students before dispersing payments. It would require scholarship funding organizations to return overpayments to the Department of Education within 30 days, provide information to parents about authorized use of funding, among other things. So the State Education Action Team supported that bill. Again, it died, but it could be revived in budget considerations. And that's education in 5 minutes.
That's great. Thank you so much. Okay, I think I'm up. Okay, I'm Stephanie Pearson, Environmental Issues Chair, and I'm going to go through several of my slides here. All of my slides. Okay, so we had the good bills. We had some good bills and a few bad ones. This is House Bill 167, former phosphate mining lands. For those of you who attended our film series, you may remember the movie Phosphate, which revealed the accelerated cancer rates in lands that were formerly phosphate mining. And so this bill actually lists a number of provisions that help landowners and people who have access to that land that were formerly phosphate mines or used the land from the phosphate mines to get a survey to see if there's any radioactive activity on that land. And it actually requires the Department of Health to conduct surveys if requested by the landowner, and that those levels be submitted and to Department of Health. And this sets it up really for civil action if needed. You may remember in the film that they highlighted a few children's playgrounds, and they took a Geiger counter out there and actually found radioactive activity. So this is a good bill. The next bill is electric bicycles. If you've been on a sidewalk and the electric bicycles come zooming by, I guess there have been some issues, injuries. So this regulates the operations of the electric bicycle on shared pathways with pedestrians. They have to give a signal when they're overtaking a pedestrian. They can't go greater than 10 miles an hour if pedestrian is there within 50 feet. And it requires that an electric bicycle safety task force be created. And this passed unanimously in both houses. Nature-based solutions for coastal resiliency. Coastal resiliency, green infrastructure, and nature-based solutions are all help a community become more resilient to storms, changing conditions, and to recover rapidly after disruptions. So what is green infrastructure? It's vegetation, soils, and natural processes to manage and treat stormwater runoff. Rain gardens and green roofs are examples of just having undeveloped natural land, which increases water supply, reduces flooding, improves water quality. And a nature-based solution would be like a living shoreline that would help reduce erosion and buffer coastal areas from storms. Some other examples are mangroves, oyster reefs, permeable pavement. So this bill requires the Department of Environmental Protection to develop guidelines and standards for the combinations of nature-based methods to address coastal resiliency by January 1st of next year. So the legislature unanimously acknowledges that we need to have coastal resiliency and that some natural remedies may be appropriate. So that's a move in the right direction. The DEP also has to establish a statewide permitting process and also has to promote public awareness and education of the value of nature-based solutions for coastal resiliency. So this is another really good bill. Another good bill is that when the state wants to sell or swap a conservation land, they now have to let the public know, which amazingly was not a requirement before. So this bill requires that that information be publicly posted. There is a process where there is a board of trustees for these type of lands, and it's composed of the governor and his cabinet. And then there's an acquisition and restoration council that makes recommendations to the board. And they can publicly, they can dispose of the property, they can swap the property if they determine that it's no longer needed for conservation purposes. So at least now there has to be some notice to the public before this is being considered. So this, again, was passed unanimously by both houses. Okay, now we get to another positive bill. It's limited though. Um, so you must have heard of PFAs. These are the forever chemicals that do not break down in the environment, accumulate in people, wildlife, and most people in the US have been exposed to it in any number of ways: touching, drinking, eating, breathing, living. So it's in our water, it's in our waste sites, it's in our consumer products. Alarmingly, it's in grease-resistant paper such as microwave, popcorn bags, and candy wrappers. So it's something that is being widely acknowledged as a major problem. This bill doesn't do anything on a grand scale, but it does regulate what's called AFFF, which is a foam used in firefighting. And you can see here that it prohibits the sale, purchase, or distribution of it and the possession of it going out a few years. It can be used in firefighting, but the firefighters cannot, it can't be used in training firefighters or any kind of testing. So to protect them. And by the way, PFAs, as you might suspect, cause all kinds of health problems, such as reproductive effects, developmental delays in children, immune system issues, and increased cholesterols and risk of obesity. So that's the actual the concern for our human health. Biosolids are also addressed in this bill. Biosolids in sewage disposal facilities, and those are the kind of residue that comes from domestic wastewater treatment. And so they're trying to say, what the bill is saying is that all public entities disposing of domestic wastewater biosolids have to do quarterly checks and send in their samples to the DEP. And this passed unanimously in both houses. Okay. All right. Now we get to the bad ones. We know that preemption exists in all of our issues, and it definitely is a problem in the environmental sphere. So, and that's simply that local government can't, things that local government should be able to do according to our Florida Constitution, home rule, is preempted to the state. And this particular bill here, 1628-12-17, prohibits governments from spending funds to advance a net zero policy regarding greenhouse gas emissions. So what a net zero policy means that we're emitting greenhouse gas emissions, and maybe we should try to offset it by certain activities, including maybe removing it from the atmosphere if we can, in other ways. But this bill gets very specific and says that a governmental entity cannot expend government funds to advance a net zero policy. It cannot have a purchasing preference. So in other words, you can't prioritize electric vehicles as a policy. If a government pays dues to a non-governmental organization that has adopted a net zero policy, that's prohibited now. A governmental entity cannot impose a tax, fee, penalty, charge, or offset to advance a net zero policy. And they cannot establish any kind of a limit or cap on the amount of emissions, carbon dioxide or other greenhouse gases. So, you wonder, what that means for resolutions, for climate action plans locally and all of that. Other bad environmental bills are bills that try to circumvent comprehensive plans, and so this protection of these areas is being loosened. So it's and we have a few examples of that after we get to this. Okay, so this is a bad bill, land and developmental regulations bill. The bill facilitates residential development by making the permit and development process less costly. So they're trying to, again, make the permit process for developers easier and less costly. But as a result, the revenue to local governments will go down, and so does the whole process gets sped up. It's harder for local governments in this bill to deny applications for development due to lack of compatibility. They're making it much harder for local governments to deny applications. This supersedes local comprehensive plans, so all the effort that local governments make to develop these comprehensive plans is overridden by this bill. It also discourages infill development, and some people complain about the density, but really the infill development does help support affordable housing, and this discourages infill development, and there's no public input. There is another bill that I don't list here, 686 and 691, that addresses what's called agricultural enclaves. So if you have a property, an agricultural property, and around it, not completely around it, but abutting it in some percentage, is residential, then the owner of that agricultural property can apply to be designated as an enclave and then ask to develop it as single. So this is eating away at the agricultural lands. Okay, so I'm going to go back 1 second. There's 2 bills that failed. One, if you attended our film series on the Ocklawaha River, there, we were so hopeful that after almost 50 years, they finally would vote to restore the river. And it had strong bipartisan support. It passed all the committees, and it was passed by the House, but the Senate president alone decided not to bring it forward. And it was a big disappointment. The other bill last year there was a bill, SB 180, that was very damaging, and the sponsor and the representatives and senators that voted for the bill soon realized what a problem it was and pledged to fix it this year. And so SB 840 and H 399 was the best option to fix the bill, and it didn't come through, which was, again, very disappointing. That bill really says that if there's a hurricane expected or has hit within 100 miles of a place, then the local government can't do anything in terms of land use planning. It's really, and the developers are going back retroactively now and suing for their local governments, and everyone thought that really they were going to fix this, and they just didn't. So that was a disappointment. So I hate to end on a negative note, but yes. So now we get to Barb. Are you here for gun violence prevention?
I am here. Can you see me?
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you, Stephanie. That was enlightening and also disappointing, but what can you do? As always. But so I'm the chairperson of gun violence prevention, and we emphasize safe storage, and that is really our. I mean, obviously, we'd like some good legislation, but and when we can't get that, we really focus on safe storage because it does save lives. So speaking of safe storage, there were several bills that were proposed that were great, and of course they went nowhere. One was about storage of handguns in private conveyances and vessels. Right now, there is no no requirement to lock up your guns on your boats and in your cars. There's no penalty if it gets stolen from your boat or car, and this bill would have required that to be stored, guns to be safely stored on conveyances. It did not go anywhere. Again, the sale, transfer, and storage of firearms. So Florida does have a safe storage law, but it is pretty useless. And so, and other states have very strong safe storage laws that require that have penalties if someone allows a gun, leaves a gun open around a kid. There are criminal and financial penalties. That is a strong law. We don't have that. That was proposed by Tina Polsky for criminal negligence in the storage of a firearm, and of course that didn't go anywhere. So one thing that another one that would have been fantastic was, of course, banning assault weapons in large capacity magazines. That did not go anywhere. There was another one about carrying weapons, prohibiting a person from carrying a weapon or firearm into certain locations and providing criminal penalties, because now that we effectively have open carry of firearms, the statute still says you can't carry. I mean, the statute's on the books. It says you can't bring guns to church or things like that, but this would have been a specific thing, but it didn't go anywhere. Sales of ammunition, requiring background checks for sale transfer of ammunition. That one didn't even get a reading. There was one called Jamie's Law, named for Jamie, a girl who was killed at Stoneman Douglas. That would have been the sale and transfer of ammunition. That didn't go anywhere. And there were, let's see, public records receipt or transfer of ammunition. Yeah, that was all part of the same thing. Okay, so what did pass? The oh no, I got my things messed up here. Okay, so the gun lobby has been trying to do campus carry. Campus carry is actually the reason I became involved with the gun safety prevention committee to begin with in 2015, because Florida was threatening to have campus carry, allowing guns on campus, which is a very bad idea, as all studies have shown that having guns on campus increases, injury and death. It's not really rocket science. So now this year, what they had passed the Guardian program after the Stoneman Douglas shooting, in which teachers and certain school personnel were allowed to carry firearms. So now, as a backdoor method of getting guns onto college campuses, they've just said, well, we're just going to expand the Guardian program to colleges. So that is going to be the law, and it's going to it is well, it's called PCS 757, which is the committee substitute for HB 757 and SB 896, and it's called school safety, but as we know, it's the opposite of school safety. But it authorizes public post-secondary institutions to participate in school guardian programs, and authorizes certain college, university employees, faculty members, and students to openly carry handguns or carry concealed weapons or concealed firearms into college or university facility. It goes on, but it's just a very bad idea, and it is going to be the law. And then there was one other about that passed. I mean, the good news is that other things did not pass. Like they were trying to lower the age for long guns after Stoneman Douglas. The age to carry a long gun or an assault weapon was raised from 18 to 21, and they were trying to reverse that, and that is not going to happen. So that's good news. And then there was one more that passed: security services at places of worship. This was CS 52 and HB 95. It passed and it said security services at places of worship provides an exemption from licensure requirements for certain volunteers who provide armed security services for places of worship under certain circumstances. Um, it's just getting more guns everywhere. That's basically what it's doing. Again, churches and synagogues were mostly gun-free zones, and in fact, they were exempted. And then, if you have somebody with a gun on the premises, they're not going to be able to stop a shooter. And they're not, there's more likely they're going to leave the gun in the bathroom by accident, or it's going to go off by accident, or something like, or someone's going to take it from them. So it does not make people safer, but that is what we've got going on here. So that's it. It could have been much worse. Certainly could have been better, but we got to be grateful that it wasn't worse. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. Next up, we have healthcare. Is Joan or Linda?
Yeah, I think it's me.
Okay.
Okay, I will be brief. I put a link in the chat for anybody who's interested in the full menu of healthcare bills. There was buku bills introduced this month, this session. Before I begin, I will mention, in case you didn't get the memo, the Medicaid expansion petition campaign is on the back burner. So if anybody has any petitions, please throw them out. We had a lot of healthcare bills this year. Unfortunately, it's an election year, so stuff got passed. The dental care for veterans bill, which we supported, did get passed. Unfortunately, the dental therapy bill, which I believe was in its 8th or 9th year this year, going to the legislature, again did not pass. And this is a bill that would allow basically a new profession called dental therapists, who would work under a licensed dentist, kind of like the ARNPs and the PAs do under physicians, but would allow them to work independently in underserved and poverty areas where there is no dental service. But once again, it hit the skids. One of the bills that was introduced this year suspended drug assistance to people with AIDS, but that got overridden at the last minute. So people will not be dying of HIV in the immediate future. Some of the bills that failed, we are applauding. And I've listed some of them here, but these primarily, as a whole, were focused on education and reaching our youngsters. The education bill, for instance, the third one down, would have required healthcare classes and included an unbelievable video called Baby Olivia. You can find it on YouTube if you like, and it's an absolutely ludicrous animation of the development of an embryo or a fetus, complete with eyelashes and batting eyes at you. But it got voted down. The medical conscience bill, I objected to myself, because what is a medical conscience? It left the field wide open for people being refused health care based on some vague objection by the provider. The parental rights bill would have prohibited teenagers from seeking help for themselves, mental health or physical health, kids with STDs, et cetera, just because you pass a bill that there'll be no sex education, I think the human race has learned a long time ago, does not prevent people from having sex. But this would have prevented the kids from getting care without their parents. Fortunately, it failed. And the last thing I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to dwell on this for a minute because it's a bit of a cautionary tale. This Senate Bill 1122, House Bill 1047. This was a specific bill that would have allowed the Broward healthcare system and the Memorial healthcare systems to meld together. It would have been a monopoly of sorts. The bill would have overlooked any monopoly laws. There would have been no liability for services that were deleted. Everybody on this call, I assume, has some kind of healthcare insurance. And what we are looking at in the big picture is what we are calling the privatization of healthcare. And this would have been an example of it, where healthcare systems just take over different hospital systems, different practices, a radiology center, a laboratory service, rural hospitals, clinics, you name it, anything that a healthcare system would be providing. And they take them over, make them part of a bigger corporation, and then start slashing those services that do not add to their bottom line. And if you're not worried about it just here in Broward County, you should be worried about it just across the United States. The league has taken a stand to try. No, we haven't taken a stand. Let me not get ahead of myself. But we have a concurrence that this board approved to take it to the national level and try and get the issue of privatization on our healthcare mission, and that is to prevent it. So lots of education, lots of information out there about healthcare systems being gobbled up and services being cut. I'm happy to say that it failed here in Broward County, but I also promise you that the CEO of Broward and Memorial, a nice young man named Sean, is continuing to pursue this. So keep your eyes open. And if you have any questions on any of the bills in the chat, you can reach out to me or Joan, and we'll be happy to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Okay, the last topic here is women's rights. And is Karen on the call? I think I saw her.
I am on the call.
Okay.
Fortunately or unfortunately, things about women's rights didn't quite make it through anything this year. We got pushed back to the back burner on everything. Some of the bills that we opposed, SB 1374 and HB 663, the abortion bounty bill failed. This bill would have created an ability for a parent or a spouse or anyone else to sue if they found out that somebody they knew was receiving abortion pills by mail, up to $100,000. That bill failed. SB 1044 and HB 993, barriers to IVF and fertility services. We were opposing that. Luckily, that also failed. It was attempting to add some obstacles to IVF and fertility treatments by having politically based things push them into signing papers of informed consent. And SB 164 HB 289 was the Abuser's Bill of Rights. This one also we were opposing, so it's good that it failed. It would have created a place where fertilized eggs and embryos were being treated as the same as a living specimen, so a living person. So anyone who was pregnant, whether they lost the baby or tried to get to have an abortion, would be treated as if they had murdered a person. So that was another good one that failed. Most of the other things didn't really make it out to the floor, so they were too busy trying to take away voting rights and things, healthcare. So many of our things just disappeared. Most of them were really bad anyway, because we also were looking at the bill that forced children to be watching the Olivia movie, Baby Olivia movie. So a lot of bad things didn't make it, which was good. And that's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, do we have, let me stop sharing the screen, first of all. Do we have any questions? Chat, I didn't check the chat. Suzette?
Yeah, I looked in the chat. I did look in the chat. We have quite a bit of information from our different committee chairs, voters'
Okay.
rights, healthcare committee. So if you need more information, check the chat for more information there. I did not see any questions in the chat. I'm sure everybody probably feels a little bit overwhelmed by all this information. Actually, Brett has her hand up.
Hi all. Sorry, first time to the
Brett,
meeting,
do
so
you
I
want
hope
to
it's an
you want to
okay
unmute? Go
protocol
ahead.
question. I heard Anna talking about, I think it was SB 1134, the DEI content, and was reflecting on the board meeting where Monica worked so hard to facilitate the language we used in our action committees, and it seems we're keeping in the words DEI. So I'm sort of turning to Stephanie here. Stephanie, my only experience with the environmental committee involves a lot of Broward County engagement, right? So like the libraries give us space there, or the some of the days that we sponsor are somewhat sponsored by Broward County. I'm wondering if with Bill 1134, if we're now putting our partners in jeopardy, keeping the words DEI. So I don't know if that's for this audience, but it was just one thing I'm curious about listening to this.
I don't know. Anna might be able to give us a little more insight in that because it says, I'm looking at the slide here, prohibits local governments from funding, promoting, or taking official action. My guess is it wouldn't affect us, but I don't know for sure. Anna, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, my thought is that most likely the public libraries would ask the county council to give them a legal advice as to how to use their facilities for groups that are engaging in DEI content. It may have to be a DEI event. We have a lot of other events that are not connected or related to DEI, the environmental, the educational, the voting rights. We have many other activities that are not, the content is not DEI. But I think the libraries would follow the advice of the general council, the county council.
Okay, that makes
Linda
sense.
has the hand up.
Linda?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, this law would certainly impact any public entity like the library system. But if these programs were taken into a private space, would that law still apply?
Well, this law applies to counties and municipalities.
Mhm.
And as
Public,
far, I'm sorry?
Right.
those are public spaces.
Yeah, counties or municipalities, cities or towns. I did not see any specific mention to schools or school districts or any other districts, and they cannot spend any funds or promote or even engage volunteers if it requires the expenditure of funds to assist the volunteers to carry out the activities if they are to promote, DEI activities. So I think the public libraries would be careful how to proceed. And I think that, Linda, you're right. If we were to use private buildings, private organizations that would allow us to use their space, then this law would not apply. This does not apply to private corporations, organizations, or entities.
Yeah,
I think the question is, if the league, for example, had a DEI themed program in the public library, I'm wondering if that would be a problem versus the fact that we have, say, an environmental program, and just because we have that policy, if it doesn't come up in the program, it might not be a problem. But I guess Anna feels, is right that you have to consult legally and see what the story is. I had a question, Anna. You said something about instead of calling it DEI, that maybe they could call it something else. Is that what you said?
Well,
The end of your
some
presentation?
private corporations are changing the
Oh.
language. It's possible, but I have not seen it, and the law does not require that using different words. Because the problem with DEI, as I see it, is that the anti-DEI people see DEI as giving a preference
Right,
to minority groups. So
right.
if you create a program or a department that gives no preference to anybody, just treats everybody the same, then you don't have a DEI problem. And so, the question is, what would you call that department? Employee happiness, I mean, whatever you want to call it, but it would apply to everybody equally, as long as it's based on no preferential treatment, then it would be perfectly fine.
That makes sense. All right, let's see. Are there any other questions anybody has?
I believe we had a comment from Janet. Janet she made a comment in the chat. Janet, did you want to unmute and expand on what you said? City of Wilton
Yeah,
Manor is listed as a municipality.
with that, City of Milton Manors would be impacted. They were listed as one of the municipalities because they do a lot of LGBTQ activities,
Mhm.
and they are predominantly LGBTQ community, so they would be impacted. They were listed as one of the cities that would be impacted by this bill.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm wondering, like that big pride event they have that we sometimes table at.
Exactly.
What's going to
Exactly, their
happen
pride
with
event.
that? Because I'm sure the city supports that.
Yes.
Hmm.
I
Oh,
can,
well,
I
I
can,
guess you have to talk to the lawyers. Nick Sortel. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Mayor Sortel.
First off, this was fantastic. So many knowledgeable people, digestible, and I learned a boatload. So appreciate
Thank
y'all.
you for coming.
I put in the comments, every year we have our fire truck goes to the Pride Parade. And every year this one woman in the city complains about us spending money for quote that cause. But they're volunteer firefighters, so they're not city employees, but we're using city resources, gas and everything in the fire truck. So I think we're out of luck, but I would love to hear how you all interpret that.
yeah, would you want me to read the paragraph,
Well, is the fire truck,
Stephanie?
the fire truck's a public thing, right? That's
Yes,
something
The,
your tax
Yeah.
dollars
your
I
pay
tax
think this
for.
is
dollars pay
also
for the fire
something
truck
that,
and the gas.
yeah,
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 I
that
think
may
it's
be that
also
may be your
something that we
problem.
Yeah, I think
the
we're
need
being,
language,
to
the
think.
language
Go
is
ahead,
a
Anna.
county. The language is a county may not provide or authorize its funds to be used by employees, contractors, volunteers,
Oh,
vendors, or agents to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. So I think, again, the county attorney will be providing guidance to each county department as to how to proceed, not to use funds, but private organizations could provide whatever funds to carry out, but cannot use, the equipment will cost money.
so I could write a check out of my own pocket, get a red truck and have all the some people walk in it.
There you
probably.
go.
As long as it's no public funds, I think it
Right.
can be done.
But you probably want to talk to your city attorney.
You got that right.
That'll follow, yes,
That's the best decision advice
yeah,
of always.
yes,
Anna, that
that'll
was
follow,
fantastic. Always talk to your attorney.
Yeah,
That's a
yes,
great call. Yep.
yeah.
yes.
Any other questions? I know we went through a lot of material, but we're already a few minutes over. So I don't want to take up your time more than we have to. But I'm sure if you have further questions, you know, contact us and we'll try to do the research and figure it out. So, Suzette, you
Absolutely.
want to
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Stephanie.
close
Thank
out?
Yeah, thank you for everyone who participated and gave us some information. As you are aware, I mean, we are still trying to understand it all. And so we're not the only ones who are trying to figure it out. Other people in the state are as well. So we rely on the not just the league at this local level, but at the state level to help us to try to figure it out and what we do next. But this is an election year, and so I don't have to tell everybody who's here that your vote matters. Who you're voting for in our legislature, they're the ones who are voting for these bills and putting these things forward. So let us continue to not just vote, but encourage everyone we know to get out there and vote. Thank you so much for everyone who participated. And we'll see you at the next meeting. And definitely vote and educate, as Janet said, vote and educate. So thank you all for participating. We'll see you at the next meeting. And please save the date for our luncheon, May 3rd.
And also the business meeting on April 25th.
That's right. Our annual business meeting is coming up next month for all our
Thank
members.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Well,
Good night.